Someone asked, is Brent moving to Chicago or San Diego? Mars, actually, Utopia Planitia. That's where Brent is going. It's going to take him a little while to get there, but he'll get there. Someone said they live in California. They know about taxes. Okay, well, I hear that you could actually throw tea overboard too, and someone will listen to you about taxes on that too. So it's worked in the past.
There's the two worst states to run a business are California and Illinois. So a lot of companies move out of California or Illinois, and specifically Chicago, to places like Texas or Nevada, where the taxes are more friendly for businesses and people.
Well, that's not here in Florida. We don't have friendly people, just friendly places that you have to pay $105 to get into.
I was reading Brent's the blog on his Ozar website, Ozar.me, about living in high rises in Chicago, and he linked to the Wikipedia that shows the most populous cities in the United States, and Chicago was, I think he said, number 3 or something like that. I was surprised how many people live in New York City. I didn't realize it was so much higher than Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is number 2. It's like yeah, it's like it was 2.5 times more populous than Los Angeles. So New York City was, what was it, 8.5 million?
Yeah.
And I think LA was, I don't know, almost 4 million, something like that. It's crazy. I mean, New York City isn't that big. I mean, I realize that they've, high rises, all the dwellings are up.
Tiny. It's a speck. I mean, Manhattan is a literal speck. Brooklyn and Queens are kind of big, but like a lot of especially like out towards like Coney and stuff, it's not as dense. So it's like really like this blob of like Manhattan to like maybe like Astoria, and then like the closer parts of Brooklyn to the city, where it's just like everyone is crammed in, and it's awful. You get herpes just looking out your window. It's ugh, horrible place. Don't move.
I have no idea it was that high. Yeah.
All you erstwhile people from Virginia and Ohio and wherever else, don't move to New York City. It's not fun. It's just a cesspool.
You keep going back though. I tried to leave.
I know. Someday I'll escape. I barely escaped like what do they call it, gravitational orbit. It was like
Now, were those numbers like metropolitan numbers or like city numbers?
I don't remember. Metro. I think it was just city. Yeah. I mean, I think just wherever the city is, the limits.
Yeah. Miami's a very small city, which is what you only get like 500,000 or something like that. But if you just include like all of Miami-Dade County, it's like 2 million or something like that. Even if you include,
I don't think they weren't including the county, just the city.
Yeah.
San Diego was number 8 on the list. I saw Seattle was way further down. Only had like 600,000 people. I was kind of surprised by that. Just because every time I've been in Seattle, it's been at least downtown Seattle is pretty packed with people.
People don't really live in
it's all just convention goers.
There's not a lot of housing that's there. They're trying to build up in like the Brickell area and stuff like that, but people was like, let's just move west. So there's like tons of people that are moving west because that's where the land is, and then you've got this wall there, and that wall is called the Everglades, and they kind of can't go past that. There's pythons and stuff.
One place that there's no pythons is on Richie's code.
Nope, not right now. Not yet.
No python.
Maybe next week.
No python.
Maybe next week. Just Postgres, which has been annoying the hell out of me over the last couple
Don't
days.
say that too loud. There are people listening, man.
No, I mean, it's the differences between SQL Server and Postgres is just trying to write the functions and stuff. It's like
Postgres does is the ANSI standard, and what Microsoft does is objectively not. So just
it kind of makes things a little easier though when you're like creating store procs and crap like that. It's just so if you haven't gotten your questions in, get them in now. You'll most likely be able to get to it now. But if you wait too long, sorry.
I'm going to start asking other questions like, is a hamburger a sandwich? And I just annoy everyone further. I could just keep going with that.
Is New York pizza really pizza?
It is more pizza than pizza. Anyway, it's 12:15 now, so we should probably get
9:15.
started. Whatever, early bird.
12:15. He was right.
Oh, boy. Oh, there are some long questions in here today.
Yeah.
Long questions. All
So
right.
if you have a short question, get them in now.
I'm gonna ask short questions, and in my head I'm gonna be paraphrasing the long questions. I'm gonna try not to Brent anyone on these. All right, let's see here. Gee, what is this short question? There isn't a short question. I lied. Oh boy. So Wes, with that virtualization question, got straight to DBA.stack exchange. There are numbers with commas in them, my man. I would love to answer you, but. Whew. All right. Here's one about TempDB. Brian asks if there are any suggestions to discourage developers from abusing TempDB, to teach proper TempDB etiquette to developers by not just filterlessly, where clauselessly, joinlessly dumping tables of values into TempDB and then indexing them and going crazy. So what would you do to teach developers the proper use of TempDB?
I mean, it sounds like the script that because he references a script that the developers asked to performance tune, and it sounds like it's a hefty script. I mean, it's just really, really long and needs to do all sorts of stuff. I mean, that's the type of script that you probably need to be using temp tables. It's hard to really answer the specific questions, but as far as massive abuse of TempDB, I don't really discourage developers from using TempDB. So what if it gets big?
I have a similar take on that. Like, so what if TempDB gets big? But there are uses for temp tables that are better than others. A lot of people will fall back to temp tables because when they do their joins with regular tables, they suck, right? They have 20 joins, or they have to do all this awful joining together. They don't have the right. There's no way to index for them because there's all sorts of different sorts and every single column. So I understand why people dump stuff off to TempDB. But my main pet peeve is when they just it's a query without they just blindly dump data in there without filtering it down to a kind of reasonable result set first. So that's my big pet peeve is when it's just some select star into from table, nowhere clause, nothing else like that. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing in that question is a few hundred gigs almost maxed out your drive. Maybe you need to get a bigger drive.
Yeah, I've supported a TempDB that was 500 gigabytes normally, and this was a mount point, and so it was dedicated TempDB, and we got a storage alert that we're running out of space. I was the on-call DBA and checked it, and it was a business user running a query, and this was production data, but this was it was a read-only replica for availability groups. So it wasn't the writable side, just the readable side where business users could run these gigantic queries. But in order to complete this specific query that caused it to grow past 500 gigabytes in size, we had to tell them that they need to start breaking up that query. So it was like this massive single select query, all sorts of stuff going on. And I don't know why it was using TempDB because it wasn't a temp table, but maybe it was an order buyer. I forget. I don't remember what the actual script was, but that is what was needed for this system. And I mean, yeah, you can break apart your queries to do smaller work at a time, so that TempDB, a single transaction doesn't cause it to grow that big. But sometimes the instance just needs a large TempDB. It really depends on your workload.
Yeah, if you're dealing with terabyte plus size databases, eventually you're going to need a terabyte plus size TempDB. That's just the way things go. And not even just for queries. You do maintenance on a big enough table, and SQL goes to. There are tons of questions. There's even a specific error you get when you try to sort something in TempDB, and there's not enough space, and the file grows and goes. It's not fun. So it's just TempDB should be sized in reaction to the size of your data, not to how big you sort of generically think TempDB should be. Anyway, let's go on. Nick asks, what is the thing being clustered or not when creating an index? Key.
Just the key, and it's sorted.
Yeah.
Physically sorted.
Yeah.
That way.
It's really quite boring. So whatever columns you choose to be the key of your clustered index, SQL sorts the clustered index by those columns, and then at the very leaf level of the index, it has all the rest of the columns in the table hanging out down there, ready to be referenced.
Right. And most of the time it's your primary key, but it doesn't have to be your
Doesn't
primary
have to
key.
be.
Doesn't have to be. You want to think about how the queries are being written and how you're reading data from it, and maybe you'll have a better primary clustered index. Maybe.
And so I think questions like this come up because different database platforms have different but close by terminology. So in Oracle, there's a thing called a cluster index where you can actually cluster tables together with an index so that values that you want to join together will be like, I don't know, closer together on disk. Not the Oracle expert, but from the brief time that I was reading about Oracle, I'm like, this is exciting. That's what I got from it. So think of it what you will. All right, here's an interesting one. And by interesting, I mean odd. My devs want to implement full text indexing. How can I predetermine what the overhead of this will be? Is there some metric that can tie the amount of data in the indexes to the drain on system resources? Not that I know of.
I don't think so. I think it's just, to answer it, you have to have a load test environment where you do a synthetic load and you measure it yourself.
Yeah, see, this is one of those things where like full text indexing is going to be a little different for everyone, kind of depending on how you use it. And it's really hard to sort of, glass ball what the load would be on your system. Unfortunately, what I would say, and probably what Richie is itching to say, is that if you want to use full text indexing, you should be looking at a different tool altogether. Richie, take it away.
Yeah, full text indexing has been around a long time, hasn't really been touched in a long time, and during that period, there's a lot of tools that have come on, like Apache Solr and Elasticsearch. Probably Elasticsearch is kind of the one everyone kind of gravitates to, that do a much better job of searching text than full text search does. And there's always these weird, odd little things that full text search does that you don't really expect it to do. And Elasticsearch is so much better at searching text type stuff because this is what it was designed to do than kind of SQL Server is. It would be interesting to see if SQL Server in the future wants to jump in that one like it did with the Hackathon stuff, but right now we're not hearing anything for that. I say go do a prototype on Elasticsearch. You'll feel much better about yourself. You'll be able to give the users a lot more results and do a lot more with it than you will for full text.
I like Elasticsearch a lot. I agree with Richie on that. I think I already talked about this a couple weeks. I'm not going to repeat myself. That's silly. I can never remember who I talked to. Some people talked about with some people. So I'm like, oh, did I say that here? Yeah. But I was going to say something about the New York DevOps meeting, but we already talked about that, so I'm going to skip that.
Anyway, that was here. That wasn't with the client. That was here.
It was.
Yeah.
Shockingly, I did not have that same conversation with my wife. Weird, right? Or with my daughter that I know of. I might have sometimes just start battling. Anyway, Thomas asks, this is a similar question to one we've gotten before. I'm coming up on mid-level DBA skills and trying to decide, and then it scrolled while I was reading.
Scrolled, yep.
My son's dumb. Oh God, where'd it go? Where are you? Thomas. There we go. I'm trying to decide where my career should go. I have no development skills. Good.
Time to learn,
development skills. He wants to know, should I go into cloud security, data science? Talk about falling off on the end there. Pick something else random. Should I go into seashell collecting?
I hear bus driving is pretty good these days.
Yeah, why not? All right, so take it away, folks. What do you?
I don't know. I mean, the question's confusing. So it wants to improve. Do you want to improve your DBA skills, or are you looking to move your career into on a different path? Because you talked about cloud and security and data science. These maybe the cloud. We'll do a little bit of that. As a DBA, if our company's using cloud stuff, but security, no. Data science, not for a DBA. So what are you trying to do? Are you trying to go down a different path, or do you want to remain a DBA?
I mean, security is, I guess, to me anyway, seems like a pretty limited field for databases. Like once you get past securing perimeter stuff, and once you get into how am I going to manage security on the database, once it's like you read a couple of chapters from BOL about users and logins and roles and permissions and stuff, and that's kind of database security in a nutshell. You figure out what port you're going to run it on, and then what. So I don't know if security is what I would go into if I was a database guy, unless I was really into security. But if you're going to go really into security, then be prepared to step away from the database, because there's a lot wider world out there than just database security.
Yeah, so data science. So I think data science comes up because it's on the top of all these, most hottest technology jobs or hottest jobs ever is data science, woo. Until you meet an actual data scientist and not someone who just calls themselves a data scientist because maybe they read a book or two, until you meet a real one, you don't really understand kind of what level they are at. I was lucky enough to just work for a few hours with a real data scientist, and my brain started leaking out of my ears. And essentially, they're statisticians. They're statisticians that understand the technology side of it as well. And this particular individual was a PhD in statistics, right? So these are the type of individuals that go and excel in data science. I mean, they're very heavy in the stats aspect of it, and they call themselves data scientists now, and it's just a marketing term. Am I a programmer? Am I a developer? Am I an app developer? It's just the same thing, and it'll be something different in 5 years. They'll call it something else. But that is the type of, learning that I see when I see a data scientist. That's the type of training that you'll be looking into, PhD in statistics.
If you want to read some sort of DBA-friendly writing on data science stuff, Buck Woody has a blog, Backyard Data Science, where he occasionally, I don't really know what his blogging schedule is. I see it pop up once in a while on my RSS feed, but I don't think he blogs regularly there. No. But his posts are always good and entertaining, and there's enough backfill data for you at this point to read. So it's Backyard Data Science, is Buck Woody's blog. Buck Woody's blog. Really smart, funny guy. Good stuff on there. So if you want sort of like a DBA friendly-ish intro to data science stuff, I would head over there and read. Probably try to not let my boss see me doing that, because he knows I'm trying to switch jobs at that point.
Yeah, Buck's the best.
Buck is the best. All right. Joe asks, oh boy, can you recommend a replacement for OpenRowset for putting the output of a store procedure into a table variable or temp table? Why is OpenRowset not working for you?
Why are you using OpenRowset, though, just to put the output of a store procedure? Just use insert into exact store procedure. I mean, is this for a Lynx server? What are you using OpenRowset for?
Yeah, I mean, there's different uses for it. Like I was using it in some test functionality for BlitzFirst to get BlitzFirst to run for the duration of some ad hoc SQL or a store procedure. Because with OpenRowset, I can just pretty easily dump stuff into a temp table to sort of relieve the server of having to return all the data. So my follow-up question, what about OpenRowset isn't working, and what exactly are you trying to do with these rows? All right. We all good on that one for now?
Yep.
Huh? Oh boy. All right. Here's one from Matthew, and I think Richie's going to have something on this. How important is physical database design in an era of SSDs, SANs, etc.? Databases.
I typically still do the physical design. And mainly it's because a lot of the tools still kind of force you to do a physical design still to kind of get it out. A lot of times if you're designing for multiple databases, that's kind of helpful to do your logical than your physical design, so then you can output the logical design into multiple databases. It's not, don't think of physical design as I'm trying to make things faster. I've never looked at it in that way. But it's a way that you can kind of get your indexes in and things like that, stuff that doesn't really fit well into your logical design. Want to read more about that? What was the book that you were reading that's in my library behind me, like the other wall behind me? Yes, thank you. Louis Davidson's Pro SQL Server Relational Database Design and Implementation. Good book on that. So yeah, so physical design doesn't necessarily mean I got to care about my what's going on in the hardware aspect of it. It's just it's how it's physically going to be implemented into the database, whatever platform that you're running.
Yeah, so a lot of people used to make a much bigger deal about separating data and log files and putting certain indexes on certain file groups off somewhere else, which made a lot more sense when storage was direct attached. For SSDs, if they're direct attached, sure, you can still see some difference there. For the SAN, it just doesn't make a lick of difference. Not a single drop. Tara, what say you?
Well, I mean, the question is, in an era of SSDs and SANs, a lot of companies don't have those, even though they've been around for a lot of years. So, physical database design is still really important to a lot of companies. Your hardware aspect, disks. We've got a lot of clients that have, slow I/O issues, and they're just running, 15K disks, no SSDs. A lot of them don't have SAN, so, physical database design, as far as hardware goes, is really important to those type of companies because they're not getting it right. That's for sure.
No.
Yeah, I haven't seen a server like that in many years, probably maybe a couple of decades. It's been a very long time. And in fact, I just go ahead and spin up a cluster in Amazon and poof, I don't have to deal with any of that stuff either. So.
Well, that's not exactly true because you can pick different kinds of storage up in the cloud.
Yes, but I would the high one, the stuff I'm using right now.
Of course you do.
Eric and I know how bad the disks are in the cloud. The default ones that you get.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
No, it's like just sludge, man. Sludge.
Well, since you'll be using this new system, I'm definitely going to choose the slow disks for your stuff.
It's okay because I'm going to choose the box with the most RAM on it, so I don't have to deal with the disks.
There you go.
Stick my thumb in your eye. Daniel has a question. He starts his question with, I have a question. Thank you. Threw me off my whole game. For some reason, the CPU on our production server has been spiking regularly every night around 9:30 for the past week. I have Redgate monitor, okay, and look at the time frame, and it is not reporting any heavy queries running. Is this a virtualization issue? The top 10 queries at that time are running in less than 5 seconds each. Anyone? Virtualized?
I had a client that we couldn't figure out why the CPU was spiking. It was a virtual environment, and Brent said to take a look at Task Manager or Perfmon and add the counter for the CPU utilization, and then there's another one further down below that's the CPU at the virtual. I think it was like virtual CPU, and so that would have told you what the CPU utilization was on the virtual host, not just your guest. And he was saying that there'd be a discrepancy there, and the issue ended up being on the host, not the actual VM.
Yeah, this is like one of those horrible downsides of VMs that no one really talks about, especially when you put your SQL server out there. You have VM admins who are not DBAs who will, if they need to, will shuffle a whole bunch of other guests onto your host for no particular reason other than or they have like automated load balancing set up, and you deal with the noisy neighbor. So unless you have reservations set up for your VM where you get to hang on to your CPUs and your memory and all that stuff, then you can run into some issues, and it may not be your SQL Server's fault. So outside of SQL Server, I would yell at my VM admins and see what they're doing, see if they're shuffling people onto my my host or whatever. For a lot of VM environments, if they are putting SQL Server on them and they're hosting multiple SQL servers, those hosts will be kind of like holy ground. They will not let other kinds of servers live on those. They will be for SQL servers only, and those SQL servers will take up like an even portion of the resources on there, like either half and half or in quarters. So I would take a closer look at my VM setup for that. And
I would wonder, CPU spiking, do you know that it's the SQL Server .exe process? I mean, have you gone down to that level in perfmon to see exactly which process is the one that's spiking? And if it truly is SQL Server, Redgate Monitor and all of those other monitoring tools, they're not looking at every single query that runs during a time frame. They're sampling it. Every few seconds they're taking a look at what's running. So maybe you don't have any long running queries, but maybe you have a spike in the amount of queries that are running. Maybe even just do a server-side trace, extended event session, and just gather everything for like 2 minutes, so that that way you're not you don't run it for a very long time. Just for maybe 5 minutes or so. That way you can collect the data, put it into a table, and then see order it by the CPU column and see what happened there.
Works for me, man. All right. Let's see. Let's see here. I don't. Erik Swigum, I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't know. I had a developer come to me saying they need a data lake now, but they seem to be confused about the concept, as am I, and I'm not sure if the implementation will be successful. Aside from coming up with a POC and testing it, I don't have any good advice. I don't know if you need a data lake either.
If they're confused about it also, why are they asking for it? So I'd say if you don't know what it is, you don't get to use it.
There will be a test at the end of the webinar.
If I were you, I'd make them watch a bunch of those Jason movies and see if they still want a data lake. All right. Thomas follows up. He says, I work mostly on the infrastructure side right now, but I'm looking to expand beyond that. He likes all the tech, and it's hard picking one thing. Seems like most DBA jobs are developer DBA rather than production DBA work. That's why I'm looking to get some focus on that side. Well, I
wonder what industry you're in, that you're mostly seeing development DBA stuff, or not industry, city you're in, because there are a ton of production DBA jobs out there. When I get the LinkedIn emails and stuff. Yeah, there are, and I don't really see a whole lot of developer DBA jobs here. Sometimes it'll say, it'll be named a little bit differently, but for the most part, I've only seen production DBA jobs.
Yeah, and I think, at least when you look at job postings like that, try to take them with a grain of salt. Really read the job description, and if you send in your resume and you go in for an interview, really I would really prod the people about what exactly their expectations of a DBA are, because they could they might expect you to develop something that is not like a performance thing. They may not expect you to develop queries that are going to be running for clients or whatever. They may expect you to develop some other process that does stuff, like if they want to set up partitioning and automate it. They may be looking at something like that, and that sort of thing could be production DBA work, because of course partitioning is not a performance feature. All right.
I like Graham's question.
Yeah, go for it. You read that one.
As DBA, I've asked about having a cloud DR strategy, and in the past have been told it's too expensive. Our area has been experiencing a natural disaster. I wonder if this is the dam that's the spillway that's having issues in central northern California. I forget what the city name is.
Sacramento.
Oroville. It's near Sacramento. I think it's Oroville. But anyways, yeah. I brought up exploring a cloud DR strategy and was told the same thing, too expensive, which I'm kind of surprised that you're getting that answer for cloud servers. By the way, we have no secondary data center and on-site backups. If my org can't grasp the need for a DR strategy now, will they ever? No. I mean, if there's a natural disaster happening near you and they aren't freaking out already, I mean, if you're in one of those towns that possibly could get flooded, I mean, they probably just don't want to spend the money, I've always worked in environments, companies that had DR sites, and these days with the cloud solutions out there, you can get a much cheaper. You have a much cheaper option than having to have your own DR site and servers and managing all that. I know we've got a white paper coming up, and I know we're allowed to talk about this now, that we wrote for Google about using Google's cloud to copy your backups into their cloud into a storage bucket. You don't have a server up. But if you ever had a natural disaster, you could then spin up a VM in the cloud and then copy those files down to that server and get up and running on that. So that would be a pretty cheap solution, because you're only having your files in the cloud. You're not hosting the server until you actually need it.
Yeah, until maybe they lose everything,
Yes.
maybe their mind will change. That's probably what's and is going to have to end up happening when the whole building gets wiped out, and all of a sudden they maybe have a backup that maybe you took. That's probably when they're like, maybe we should be able to get something that's a little, I don't know, we could get up a little faster than a couple months.
Yeah, do you at least have your backups being copied to tape and off-site Iron Mountains, that type of thing? I would hope something's going off-site.
I think if I were the DBA in that position, I would be totally fine with that, as long as I had it in writing.
Yeah.
As long as I was like, this is what I told you guys however many months back, and you said no because it was too expensive, and now we're in this position, I can't do anything for you. As long as I had that in writing, I would be totally cool with just being like, I have one less computer to manage.
Yep. And talk to them about RPO and RTO goals. A lot of companies have those numbers for on-site issues, and maybe they have the same RPO and RTO goals for disaster recovery, but show them what the actual reality is of those RPO RTO. What are your goals are not the same thing as your current state. So let them know how long it would take to bring up production if a natural disaster occurred, and maybe you'd have total data loss if your backups aren't going anywhere.
Yeah, and according with that, I used to be a project manager, and I always used to talk to my sponsors about risk. And I used to have like a punch board of just, hey, if this risk occurs, and what's the severity, what's the likelihood of that's going to occur, high, medium, or low, and then what would be our how would we fix that, right? And so having these lists and sharing that with people and saying, hey, if these are our risks, high, medium, or low. It's a high risk for this to happen, or maybe it's a low risk that it may happen, but it's a high. It will cost a lot of effort to get this thing back up and running. Having those type of things in front of people will actually be like, oh, I didn't know that was a problem, because I never thought about it because I'm the VP of whatever, and frankly, servers aren't my deal, right? So keeping that kind of list was really helpful when I was a PM.
All right. And Richie, I'm sorry you just got done talking, but I'm going to pick on you again. Matthew asks, what is the best branching strategy for source control in a database project? We are using VSO front end and a Git backend.
What's VSO?
Visual Studio Online.
Online, okay.
Yeah. It depends. I think when you talk about branching with databases, I still haven't found a database strategy that I like. Code is a lot easier, but databases are a little bit harder, mainly because of the deployment aspect of it than anything else. I'd say go for it. Pick one, whether it's you're using something like the Git strategy or whatever, and see how it works. And kind of whatever sticks with your team is usually the one that I would stick with. So pick one, try it for a few weeks. If it doesn't work, go for something else that kind of works with your team. I think branching is more what works with your team than actually what works technically. So just try something with your team, talk it over with them, get some feedback, and if it works, stick with it. If it doesn't, go somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more of a cultural thing than a tech thing. But what do I know? I'm not a developer. There's an interesting clip. I do. Barely get.
Yeah, you do.
I kind of get it. Usually mess one thing up and then. Anyway, so JH has an interesting question. Does putting a database in full recovery model slow down performance?
He said model. Woohoo!
It's catching on.
And are there any native methods to query the transaction log? Yes and yes. That's my answer. Tara, what do you say?
I mean, does it really affect performance, though? I mean, it
inserts, updates, and deletes. You may not.
You still, even if you use simple recovery model, it's still writing those transactions to the transaction log. You're not getting rid of that step. I mean, they still get written to the transaction log. It's just what happens at the end of the transaction. If you're using simple recovery model, that transaction is now gone from the transaction log. So yeah, you do have to do log backups for full recovery or bulk log, but do they really slow down performance, the recovery model?
Yeah. So like one thing that a lot of people might be getting in simple recovery and not know it is minimal logging.
Right.
Minimal logging is pretty magical for inserts. So if you're getting minimal logging sort of by accident, if like it's Tuesday on Mars and everything else is aligned for you, you can have like haphazardly get it. Then yes, it can totally way speed up inserts like crazy. But other stuff not really. So
What version did that start out in?
Minimal logging? Oh, God, 2005 maybe?
Oh, really? Okay.
2008? It's been around forever. So like your database has to be in like simple or bulk logs. And this is probably why you probably never saw much of it because you're a Miss Full Recovery model.
Yeah, I was. Only non-prod used. I never even used bulk logs, because your RPO is destroyed with bulk logged.
Bulk logged is like a weird joke.
Yeah. I mean, I knew about minimal logging as far as, like truncate and, whatever, bulk inserts and things like that. But are you saying that the insert into T-SQL command can use minimal logging?
Yeah. If you, you have to use tab log, and sometimes you have to use a trace flag.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It definitely works on tables with like an empty clustered index and no non-clustered indexes or
so
heap.
A lot of rules.
Yeah.
All right.
If you're accidentally getting it, it's really but, yeah. Sometimes even if you're doing everything right, it doesn't work. So I don't know. Minimal logging, one of those things. Anyway, that is the 12:45 mark. Everyone is exhausted and needs a bio break and probably food. So we're gonna scram out of here. Tara, are you typing an answer to someone?
Yes.
Okay, I'll hold on a second then.
Michael asked what is RPO, because I kept saying RPO and RTO. So RPO is your recovery point objective. That's how much data can your company lose, and then RTO is your recovery time objective. How long can you be down? How long is it going to take you to restore or fail over or whatever it is?
I'm pretty sure we have a page on that, don't we?
We do, yeah.
Like a billion of them. Billions of pages. All right, well that is it for real this time. Now we're at 12:46, and Brent's going to fire me for going a minute over. Anyway, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Goodbye, everyone. Adios.